Hi everyone, Radhe Radhe. In this video, we're going to be doing Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6. So let's call out to Bhagwan Shri Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Dear Bhagwan Shri Krishna, thank you for giving us this opportunity to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you for letting us know what it is all about. Thank you for bringing us on this path where we understand that you are the ultimate, where we understand that Srimad Bhagavatam, what we know about Srimad Bhagavatam, and we are actually motivated to read it and listen to it and hear it. Thank you for all of this. I'm immensely grateful. Okay, so let us read the text. Creation of the Universal Form, Chapter 6. 1. Rishi Maitreya said, Maitreya Muni and Rishi Maitreya both work. The Lord thus heard about the suspension of the progressive creative functions of the universe due to the non-combination of his potencies, such as Mahat Tattva. I didn't understand that. 2. The Supreme Powerful Lord then simultaneously entered into 23 elements. There are 23 elements with the goddess Kali, his external energy, who alone amalgamates all the different elements. 3. Thus, when Bhagwan entered into the elements by his energy, all the living entities were enlivened into different activities, just as one is engaged in his work after awakening from sleep. So, I've done this cosmology course, which explains all of this in great detail, and I don't remember it. I've done it twice, but I don't remember. It's so complicated. But at some point I'm gonna keep on doing it as soon as this Prabhuji who does it here will I mean every time he does it, basically I'm just gonna go and hear it until it finally seeps in, and then I'll be able to explain, but I don't know when that will happen, but then I'll be able to explain. 4. When the 23 principal elements were set in action by the will of the Supreme, the gigantic universal form, or the Vishwarup body of the Lord, came into existence. 5. As the Lord in his plenary portion entered into the elements of the universal creation, they transformed into the gigantic form in which all planetary systems, and all movable and immovable creations rest. 6. The gigantic Virat Purush, known as Hiranmaya, lived for 1000 celestial years on the water of the universe, and all the living entities lay with him. 7. The total energy of the Mahat Tattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Roop divided himself by himself into the consciousness of living entities, the life of activity, the self-identification, which are subordinate, subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. Totally all going beyond above my head. Text 8. The gigantic universal form of Bhagwan is the first incarnation and plenary portion of the Supersoul. He is the self of an unlimited number of living entities, and in him rests the aggregate creation which thus flourishes. 9. The gigantic universal form is represented by 3, 10, and 1 in the sense that he is the body, he is the mind and senses, and he is the dynamic force for all movements by 10 kinds of life energy, and he is the one heart where life energy is generated. 10. The Supreme Lord is the supersoul of all demigods, entrusted with the task of constructing the cosmic manifestation. Being thus prayed to by the demigods, he thought to himself and thus manifested the gigantic form for their understanding. 11. Maitreya said, "You may now hear from me how the Supreme Lord separated himself into the diverse forms of the demigods after the manifestation of the gigantic universal form." 12. Agni or heat separated from his mouth, and all the other directors of material affairs entered into it in their respective positions. By that energy, the living entity expresses himself in words. 13. When the palette of the gigantic form was separately manifested, Varun, the director of water in the planetary systems, entered therein, and thus the living entity has the facility to taste everything with his tongue. 14. When the Lord's two nostrils separately manifested themselves, the dual Ashwini Kumaras entered them in their proper positions, and because of this, the living entities can smell the aromas of everything. Okay. 15. Thereafter, the two eyes of the gigantic form of the Lord were separately manifested. The sun, the director of light, then entered them with the partial representation of eyesight, and thus the living entities can have vision of forms. So it's different senses, how we are able to have the different senses. 16. When there was a manifestation of skin separated from the gigantic form, Anila, the deity directing the wind, entered with partial touch, and thus the living entities can realize tactile knowledge. 17. When the ears of gigantic form became manifested, all the controlling deities of the directions entered into them without the hearing principles by which all living entities hear and take advantage of sound. 18. When there was a separate manifestation of skin, the controlling deities of sensations and their different parts entered into it. Thus the living entities feel itching and happiness due to touch. 19. When the genitals of gigantic form of the gigant separately became manifest, then Prajapati, the original living creature, entered into them with his partial semen, and thus the living entities can enjoy sex pleasure. 20. The evacuating channel separately became manifest, and the director named Mitra entered into it with partial organs of evacuation. Thus the living entities are able to pass stool and urine. 21. Thereafter, when the hands of the gigantic form separately became manifested, Indra, the ruler of heavenly planets, entered into them. Thus, the living entity is able to transact business for his livelihood. I thought Indra was a god of rain. I didn't know he had anything to do with this transacting business for livelihood. 22. Thereafter, the legs of the gigantic form separately became manifest, and the demigod Vishnu, not Bhagwan, entered with partial movement. This helps living entity move to his destination, the legs. 23. When the intelligence of the gigantic form separately became manifest, Brahma, the lord of the Vedas, entered into it with partial form of understanding. Thus, we are able to understand. 24. After that, the heart of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, and into it entered the moon demigod with partial mental activity. Thus, we can conduct mental speculations. 25. Thereafter, materialistic ego of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, and into it entered Rudra, the controller of false ego. Rudra is Shiva, right? With his own partial activities by which the living entity transacts his objective actions. 26. Thereafter, when his consciousness separately manifested itself, the total energy Mahatattva entered with his conscious part. Thus, the living entity is able to conceive specific knowledge. Thereafter, from the head of the gigantic form, the heavenly planets were manifested, and from his legs, the earthly planet, and his abdomen, the sky, separately manifested themselves. Within them, the demigods and others were also manifested in terms of the modes of material nature. From the head, the planets; from legs, earthly planets, heavenly planets, earthly planets, and like the three lokas, right? So the earth is eighth. So the first 7 is heavenly planets, and earthly planet is 8, and then below that is okay. 28. The demigods qualified by the super excellent quality of mode of goodness are situated in the heavenly planets, human beings, mode of passion on earth. 29. Living entities who are associates of Rudra developed in the third mode or ignorance, they are situated in the sky between earthly and heavenly planets. Okay, what happened to the lower planetary system? 30. O chief of Kuru dynasty, the Vedic wisdom became manifested from the mouth of the Virat, the gigantic form. Those who are inclined to this Vedic knowledge are called Brahmanas, and they are the natural teachers and spiritual masters of all orders of society. The Vedic wisdom became manifested from the mouth. 31. Thereafter, the power of protection was generated from the arms of the gigantic Virat form, and in relation to such power, the Kshatriyas also came into existence to protect. 32. The means of livelihood, production of grains and distribution to prajas was generated from thighs, which is the Vaishyas. 33. Thereafter, service was manifested from legs of Bhagwan. Situated on the legs are Shudras who satisfy Lord by service. 34. All these different social divisions are born with their occupational duties and living conditions from Bhagwan. Thus, for an unconditional life and self-realization, one has to worship Bhagwan under the direction of Guru. 35. O Vidur, who can estimate or measure the transcendental time, work, and potency of the gigantic form manifested by the internal potency of Bhagwan? 36. In spite of my inability, whatever I've been able to hear from Guru and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech, for otherwise my power of speaking would remain unchaste. 37. The highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor. Such activities are so nicely arranged in writing by the greatly learned sages that the actual purpose of the year is served just by being near them. 38. O my son, the original poet Brahma, after mature meditation for 1,000 celestial years, could know only the glories of Supreme Soul are inconceivable. 39. The wonderful potency of Bhagwan is bewildering even to jugglers. That potency is unknown even to the self-sufficient Lord. So is unknown to others. 40. Words, mind and ego with their respective controlling demigods have failed to achieve success in knowing Bhagwan. Therefore, we simply have to offer our respectful obeisances unto him as a matter of sanity. Okay. That's it for this video. We'll do chapter 7, Canto 3, chapter 7 in the next video. Wish you all a very beautiful day. Radhe Radhe.